Throughout cinematic history, vampires and werewolves have frequently crossed paths on the silver screen in a battle for dominance. Today, we've handpicked a werewolf and vampire film, pitting them against each other in an epic double feature showdown. Join us as we delve into these mesmerizing creature features to determine which genre reigns supreme. Welcome to this episode of Cursed Beings.
Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to Voices from the Mausoleum, and welcome to an episode of Cursed Beings with my co-host, Albert.
What's up, guys? How's it going?
And this episode of Cursed Beings is all about Jaws.
Not really. It's a different creature that we're talking about today. Actually, multiple creatures, but yes.
Yes. I'm just giving Albert a hard time about his shirt. So if you're new to this series, it's a series where one of us picks a werewolf movie, the other picks a vampire movie, and then we pin them against each other and go down our handy dandy little chart that Albert made us, which is somewhere. There it is. And we're connected.
We determine which movie's better or which movie we think wins out against the other one, right?
Yeah. I think, if I'm remembering correctly, I think the werewolves are still winning. I think only one vampire movie's won so far. I think they've all been werewolf picks. That's not very surprising.
Werewolves are amazing. That's why.
They really are. But yeah, so last time we sat down to chat, it was my pick for the werewolf movie. So this time it was Albert's pick. And as tradition dictates, we're going to start with that. We'll let you introduce the werewolf movie we're talking about.
All right. So my choice for this one was Cursed from 2004. It's a horror comedy. And in Los Angeles, siblings Ellie, Christina Ricci, and Jimmy, Jesse Eisenberg, come across an accident on Mulholland Drive. As they try to help the woman caught in the wreckage, a ferocious creature attacks them, devouring the woman and scratching the terrified siblings. They slowly discover that the creature was a werewolf and that they have fallen victim to a deadly curse. Now that they have been sliced by the werewolf's claws, they will be transformed into werewolves themselves.
Sliced,
not scratched, not like torn or ripped or nothing. Sliced. So yeah, I was shocked that when I watched this that there were so many famous actors in this. I'm just gonna try to stream through a bunch of them really quick.
Yep.
Jesse Eisenberg, Christina Ricci, Milo Ventimiglia, I'm not even gonna try to say that again. Shannon Elizabeth, Judy Greer, Joshua Jackson. Skeet Ulrich was supposed to be in this. He's not. I had to take his Maya, Scott Baio, Craig Kilborn.
Yeah, it's a very loaded cast. I was telling you this before we started recording. It's probably been like 10 years since I've seen this. And I genuinely, I did not remember I remember Judy Greer. I remembered Christina Ricci and Jesse, and Jackson, but that was about it. Like I really, when all those other people were, I was like, dang, I know most of this cast. But I guess it's too like the timing it came out, right? Like when this came out, these were all people that were pretty relevant at the time. So
my other question to you is, which version did you watch? Because I have the rated R version, but I'm wondering, did you watch the PG-13 version or the rated R version? Because they have an unrated.
Is the difference just gore?
I think so. In the last scene of the movie, did you see full on what happened, or did they cut from it? Did they show a separated head and body and blood on the ground?
No.
Oh. Then you must have watched the PG-13. So
I watched Yeah, that one wasn't streaming, so I watched it on a.
Okay, I'm sorry.
It's okay. Was that a body part?
No, not at all. Anyway, so yeah, you watched it on streaming.
No, it wasn't on streaming, so I watched it on like a random like website,
Okay.
and I do remember thinking when I was watching it, I was like, okay, so this really isn't as gory as I was thinking I remembered it being. So I think I have seen the other one, but the one I rewatched to get ready to chat about, I think might have been the PG-13 one. That might have been
Okay. Okay. So, are you going to tell us what your film choice was?
Yeah, this was hard because I feel like Cursed is a little more mainstream. And I was like, man, like there's certain ones, like I know we've talked about this before. I'm like, I'm not ready to bring up yet. Like there's certain ones I'm like not ready yet, especially for vampires. And so
Yeah.
I was like, all right, so I was like, it started going through and I was trying to find some that maybe came out around the same time, but there were some really bad ones that came out around the same time as this. So I was like, let me see what I can find. And so I ended up picking a movie that came out in the early 2000s, but was a film that I had never seen or heard of. And I was like, well, why not? That seems like a good match. And so the movie I picked to go against this is Perfect Creature, which came out in 2006. It's not so horror-esque, right? It's really more of a like action drama. It's directed and written by Glenn Standring. It stars Dougray Scott, Saffron Burrows, and Leo Gregory, the main actors. The vampire myth is given a stylish 1960s treatment when a human cop partners with a vampire cop to stop a vamp bent on creating a war between the two separate but equal races. Was this the first watch for you? I can't remember.
It was a first watch for me, yes.
Okay. And had you heard of this before? Because I had never even heard of this movie.
I'd seen the cover multiple times.
Okay.
But I'd never checked it out, and I don't know why.
Yeah, I did like it. I think that it's very much like if Underworld and Daybreakers had a baby, it would be this movie. Like it's very reminiscent of those two films, but kind of like mixed together. It's
Okay.
very cop drama. It's like almost because it takes place, I think, in a different time, it makes it feel almost dystopian. So it kind of had that going on too. But yeah, what did you think of this as a first watch?
For me, you know those Lifetime shows, like those Lifetime movies, like it kind of felt like if they had to make a horror movie for Lifetime, and I was watching it, being like,
Oh no. Lifetime vampire movie. Oh,
but I don't want to just give all my opinions of that film out right off the bat.
yeah.
So I'm gonna keep some of them tucked into my pockets.
Yeah,
But
for sure.
right off the bat, that was my initial like, And I don't know if it was like the glowiness of it, like maybe where it felt almost dreamlike, or like some of the
Yeah.
lighting tactics, like just kind of like it was still dark and it had its dark gothicness to it, but it
Very
also had
underworld.
that like the way it was lit was almost like a smoky blur. And I feel
Mhm.
like Lifetime movies, like they make me feel like it's almost like you're in a daze while you're watching it or something. Or you're
Yeah.
tired and you're like gotta rub your eyes because you just want it to focus, but it won't. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah, I think yeah, it reminds me a lot of the blue black shading and colorations in Underworld. It's very similar in that regard. Same kind of grit, same kind of like I think over editing, the editing part of it I think I mean, because the real world doesn't look like that color wise, like it's obviously edited, but that's very much what it reminded me of. Because I think Daybreakers is very blue black as well. Um,
There
but
is
yeah, it
something.
was it
There
was
is
interesting that
something
I
that
had never heard of it before because I feel like it kind of fits. I feel like this maybe should be more popular because I've never even, like I said, never even heard of it.
it did make me think of that one, Underworld, a little bit,
hmm
for sure.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
But yeah, I'm glad that I watched it. I don't feel like I got robbed by watching it, but It was just a very interesting vampire take on a vampire story, I think, given the time frame that this came out. So
Agreed.
yeah.
So as far as, are we just gonna get into like the things and kind of compare and contrast these now?
Yeah, I love you
Is
always
it
say
time
that.
for that?
It always makes me laugh. You're always like, "Are we just gonna do this?"
I want to make sure you're ready to go. I don't want to just like.
I'm always ready. I'm good.
All right. So scare factor wise, how did you feel about Cursed?
Yeah. So in case anyone has forgotten, we do spoilers. These are both really old movies, but just if that's gonna mess it up, just to let you know.
Spoilers.
So I remembered that Judy Greer is the other werewolf. I remembered that, even though I hadn't seen it in a long time. And her werewolf is very funny to me. I do not think, but I have to say, scare wise, that parking deck scene is like one of my favorite scenes in like a werewolf movie. I think it's so good. The stalking, the jumping, the running, the anxiety of like any minute now. It kind of reminds me of the way I feel when I watch the kitchen scene with the velociraptors in Jurassic Park, where you're just like waiting and waiting. And so I loved that. And that scene carries it goes on and on for a while. I thought that was really like pumping me up. Like I felt like that was pretty scary. Um, but like then there's like parts obviously later where she like flicks them off, and there's like things like that in it where you're just like, but I
Overly
think at the
cheesy.
very least that one scene was pretty scary. I felt very like anxious watching it.
I agree with that. That and even the intro scene with the accident.
Oh,
When
that was good. Where it just
yeah.
yeah, that was good.
But yeah, no, that parking lot scene with the elevator and seeing his arm reach into the, oh my gosh, that is so, yeah, I love that scene. I think there's like maybe 3 scenes that are kind of like that, or kind of almost hit that type of vein where it's like you feel that type of stress from it. So for me,
Yes.
I would agree with you. There's a couple decent intense scenes.
Yes, yeah, and it kinda like, and I know, like, this was something you liked about, Howl, she does take her claws and run them down that car. I was just like, "Oh, I hate her." Like, ugh. So, yeah, I thought that was pretty good.
There's something about the way that the claws and the hand look though too, that just
Mhm.
make it like, fuck, I don't know. It just makes it.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. Yeah, no, I agree. I don't know what you'd say either, but I know, I agree with what you mean. Yeah, it's very it's effective. It works. And I think because like I think some of it too is like there's a lot of CGI in this, but the basic stuff that we see when the werewolf is completely transformed is pretty practical for the most part. And so there is something like as simple as hands that really do just like drive home that it's like a monster. Like there's just something about that because we see a lot of focus on hands during transformations, and like there's just something about that. I agree that just like hits a specific way.
Yes.
Yeah, totally agree.
All
Yeah.
right. Well, what about the scare factor in Perfect Creature? Is it a perfect creature or just perfect creature?
It's just perfect creature, but I think I keep saying as well. It's just
Okay.
perfect creature. Feels like it should have a letter A in front of it, but it's just perfect creature. Um, it was really more drama than horror, I think. There's only a few times where I was kind of like there's a scene when they have Edgar in that room behind the glass and I don't know what he is, like a doctor or scientist or whatever. And it's like all dark and he's like leaning into it and you can't see anything. And that's like that part was probably like the closest to being like where you're kind of like expecting something to like jump out or something. Otherwise, I didn't think I find this one too scary. Did you?
Um, I don't want to give too much away too early about my feelings on this film. I felt it felt like it was a little slow, and I was looking, it built up a lot of moments like it was going to have that impactful scare moment,
And then
and it
didn't.
never really delivered for me. And
Yeah.
that's what I was like, especially when he was um kind of chained up with the stuff in him. I thought he was going to have a
Mhm.
freak out moment and like break out of there, and that never came to
Yeah,
be. Just
he
kind
just talked a lot of shit.
of. So yeah, but there was a lot of times where like the anticipation was building for those moments of scare, and then
Yeah.
it never really, for me, it never really delivered or had that impactful of moments.
Yeah. No, yeah, I agree with that. I think that it I think the potential was there, but it was
Hmm.
very much focused on the I don't want to say the story because that sounds like a dumb thing to say, but it's like it was very much more focused on the drama elements than the monster elements, I think. Like I think if you were to take, I mean, like this is very much like kind of remind this is a bit of a stretch, but this is what I was thinking when I was watching the part with the water is that part in Batman with Christian Bale where Cillian Murphy is the Scarecrow and he's like, I'm going to put this stuff into the water. And he felt like a Batman villain. He's like, I'm going to put this stuff into the water, and you're just like, okay, I guess.
Yeah, it did feel like they were trying to lean a little bit more into the detective like
Yes.
side of things and make
Right.
it more of like
Yeah.
that type of thing, which from the description you read, it makes sense.
Yeah.
But yeah, for like a horror vampire movie, it kind of threw me for a little bit. It was a little confusing.
Yeah, and I think the problem too is, right, like when you look at the cover for this, the poster, it feels like it's gonna be a horror movie. Like,
Yeah.
it's very like the close up of the teeth and all that, like you feel like, okay, this is gonna be a horror movie. And then it ends up not really being so much. And it's not a bad movie. I don't mean it like that, but it's just I think that the concept and the poster for this are a little misleading because I do think if you have never seen it, but because I was expecting a horror movie, like, so, I kind of went into it with that mentality. And then I had to kind of like, has that ever happened to you where like you go in thinking it's going to be like one way and then it's not? So then it like takes a second for your brain to like switch into the
Yeah.
other gear of whatever. So, cause I also thought there were parts of this that were really slow. So it was, but yeah, I didn't find it to be, as scary. Definitely not compared to Cursed, I would say. Yeah.
Okay. How about on the gore scale? Where are we rating this film? I guess we'll start with Cursed since we're doing that, then the other.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So I guess mine's gonna probably be a little different, right? Because I don't remember the details of the rated R one. Because the PG-13 blood wise, I would say is maybe bloodthirsty. Wouldn't say it's
Yeah.
very crazy. Um, you really only see a few wounds, and it, like you said, it kind of like pulls away.
So yeah,
So
they have a full-on decapitation at the end of this film with
I
a shovel,
love.
and they're kicking it, and
I
it's
could have
just
just
like,
rented it. That's what I get for being cheap.
I mean, yeah. So and just watching them work on all the practical effects and stuff, and
Mhm.
having the guy in the werewolf costume, and seeing the
Mhm.
dudes with the different remote controls to like the different facial features and the eyes and the mouth and
That's cool.
the ears and stuff were all moving,
Yeah,
and how they all had to work in unison. I thought
that's
that was
cool.
really cool how they did that.
Yeah,
uh
that is really cool.
so I would say bloody, I'm sorry. And I started going off on a tangent there,
That's okay.
but yeah. All
Okay,
right.
so not so much over the top more than the PG-13, but just definitely more gory. Yeah, because I don't think I really it's really probably honestly between dry and bloodthirsty because there's just really not that much in the version that I watched. Because I was thinking that too, because we talk a lot about like when we watch werewolf movies, we're looking for the carnage, like that's what we want. And so this wasn't very bloody at all. Or
Okay.
gory. Wasn't very gory at all.
Moving over to Perfect Creature. Where are we at?
Bloody and a half.
I was gonna go with bloody.
Yeah. there's a lot of blood because it's live vampires, but as far as like actual gore, you know, it's still pretty tame for especially for a vampire movie.
Okay, so we're going with bloody.
Bloody.
All right. Now, going back to Cursed, the transformations, I feel like there's only one real transformation, right?
Yeah.
Right? Or I
There's
mean,
partials. There's partials.
there's partial
But
transformation.
full on, there's only one. Yeah.
And yeah, for me, it was a little bit rough. But I'll let you kind of give your thoughts on that first.
Yeah, it was not good. It was super cartoony. Like I'm telling you, like, okay, I do think that werewolves in concept are scary, right? And if I saw one, I would probably be very scared, right? But if I saw a werewolf like mid transformation and that's what it looked like, I would just be like, oh, you poor thing. It was like super, super cartoony. It like looked weird and not very, it took forever for it to even resemble a wolf. And I was like, what? I didn't remember this. I did not remember the transformation. Like I remembered kind of like obviously I remembered for the most part I remembered what the wolf looked like when it was like done, which I think looks great. But the transformation is hella weak for a werewolf. Like I was really disappointed in how goofy it looked.
I agree.
Okay, good. Because if you were like 10 out of 10, best transformation ever.
I wrote that the CGI wasn't bad, but also very cartoony, and that's what it made me think. It was just like, what is this going on?
Yeah,
right now?
did not feel like a werewolf transformation. I wasn't really sure what I was looking at. Like it was very strange. So yeah, it's not good. It's especially like we say all the time, like compared to what is already in existence. That's big shoes to fill, right? So going the CGI route was fine. Like I didn't hate other pieces that were CGI, but that was rough. I agree with what you said in the beginning.
All right. So as far as the perfect creature film, obviously because it's vampires, there's not really going to be transformations, but possibly the going from human to vampire. I don't even really remember seeing too much of that. Do you?
No, the bits that were like that, unfortunately, were when Edgar infected people, and it was once again like a zombie vampire. I don't know why that keeps happening. This is like the third one we've had because they treat it like a virus. And I will say this. I will say that that piece of it is handled, I think, much better in this than it is in some of the others we've discussed that are similar. Because it's supposed to be this whole like genetic thing or this whole like scientific thing of like whatever. But yeah, really the closest thing to that is when he infects people and then we see them like raging, right? And they're like changing, or then they like some of them die, and I guess it was like they couldn't all survive it. I didn't really understand that part, but that's really the only type of like transformation, and really they just look very sick.
Yeah. They do, and then I think they even die, don't they? I don't even think they.
I couldn't remember. I know it shows some of them dying because I think they have like this whole thing about like not being able to carry it, right? Like they've been trying because there hasn't been like a new vampire born in 70 years, and they're like worried about the brotherhood, and they're like, oh, we got to like figure it out. So they've been like messing with stuff to try to basically engineer women that can carry vampire babies, essentially, right? And so it was like, yeah, I don't know, like that was really like, but nobody could survive it. Like that was the whole thing, was like finding people who could survive it. And he thought for some reason he could pass this thing on, and it wasn't working before, but somehow putting it in his blood was going to make, I don't know, it's weird.
Agreed.
I don't know, it was weird.
Yeah, for me it was there wasn't too much on the creative side of as far as making them look like vampires or doing anything to really change the look or the aesthetic of their face or anything. They just kind of kept them the same and put fangs in their mouth, and they had them make angry faces. We can give them that. But yeah, not much as far as the creature design or practical effects to make it look a certain way.
Yeah, to your point, they just look like humans. I mean, the exception being the sickly ones, but again, they just look sick. They didn't look like monsters or, you know what I mean? So yeah,
Yeah.
I agree. I agree with that.
All right. So the practical effects in Cursed. Obviously, we kind of touched on that a little bit
Mhm.
as far as the transformation specifically, but overall, um, it's tough because you got so much practical and then also you have so much CGI, and it almost feels like they're in competition. So what's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, it felt like it was mostly CGI. I felt I'm trying to think of like what else was practical. So I think the wolf in final form, right, is mostly practical, right? Because it's a suit. And
Mhm.
then, but all of the other stuff, I mean, okay, the contact lenses are a given, right? But like anytime the hands changed, that was all CGI. The minor face shifts just for like the second, like the ones that just lasted for like a second. When like Jimmy and Ellie have like their little moments, it's like all CGI and it's over very quickly. I'm trying to think of what else was it that was practical about it other than the suit.
The suit, yeah, because there was a lot of CGI. I want to say it was when the werewolf was doing like big movements like jumping, climbing, hopping on the
Yeah,
cars. Obviously, that was all CGI. But then the close up shots of the actual werewolf, like
were
costume, or where it's holding Christina Ricci or another character, I think it was, that's when it was real.
yeah, and it's I will say, I think of the CGI that exists, I think the best of it is the fast movements of the werewolf. I think
Yeah.
because the other, like we said, with the transformation, the CGI looked kind of silly. And it didn't have like a lingering effect in any of the other scenes where they had like the partial transformations or whatever you want to call those. Like, but I thought like the scene when she's running on the cars in the parking deck, like that looked pretty good to me. Like I didn't have any complaints with it, but yeah, I liked I like the way the wolf looks in this as a solid entity, just like as like when it's done changing. And I wish we had had more of them change all the way because we really only see her, right? She's the only one that we see fully changed. Because
Yeah.
Joshua
I
Jackson's
think
character, what's his name,
so.
Jake?
I think he
We
only
never see
partially
him change.
changes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
So
it would have been cool to see like more of them change. I mean, obviously it's too late now, it's old, but but it would have been cool to see like more of that because I do think that was a really strong component of the movie was the way the werewolf looked in finality when it was like.
I completely agree. I
Yeah.
even have a fun fact here,
Oh, lay
or
it on.
just something about the fact that Rick Baker did the werewolf effects for the original version of the film. But once Bob Weinstein and Miramax ordered reshoots, all the scenes with Baker's effects were deleted, and K&B had to take over. But even most of their work didn't make it into the final film because Miramax and Bob Weinstein thought that their effects didn't look good, so they added a lot of CGI into the film to cover up all the practical effects, like death scenes and almost all the werewolf scenes. There are some promotional stills that were shown in magazines like Fangoria
Oh,
at the
cool.
time of the production, which show some of the removed practical gore effects. So yeah, it's kind of a bummer because of the fact that, I mean, how do you argue with Rick Baker? He's the one who did uh
Yeah,
I mean, he's got 7 Academy Awards for makeup.
it's
Uh One was for his work in American Werewolf in London.
yep,
He also worked on Michael Jackson's Thriller,
thriller. Yeah.
and one of both of our favorites, the
Mhm.
Wolfman from 2010. So
Yeah.
the fact that,
Like, what are you doing?
right? Like, how do you
But
be like, nah, you don't know what you're doing? You
well,
need
and
to
it's so
like,
crazy because you know how many times things are ruined because the studios get involved and make those final decisions? The thing the 2016, the thing, or 20, whatever, that the last thing that
The
was
newer
made.
one.
That I think would have been a really, really great or I think it's supposed to be like a continue. I don't know what it's supposed to be, but that one, I think it would have been really good if they had left the practical alone, but the studio did the same thing to them. They made them go over it with CGI, and they made me, and they made me like I'm part of, like I made the film. They made them cut parts of the practical effects out, because, and it's so crazy because we're like, the CGI I think is what ruins some of the moments in this, because it's like too much. Like, and I think it's so bizarre that anybody would try to make the argument that CGI is better than practical. That's never the case. I don't care what you're doing. That's never the case. Like, I don't know. Weird.
I agree.
Strange.
All right. Well, we already talked about the creature design. How about the acting in Cursed? What did you think?
I think it's a very 2000s movie. It's very, and I'm not just saying this because Joshua Jackson is, but it's very Dawson's Creek, right? It's very like melodramatic, and he's mine, not yours, and wah, 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 and oh, you're the best thing that's ever happened to me. And it's very like that, right? It's very over the top. I think I think one of the best performances in this, it was two people that I just really thought brought what they needed to bring to the situation. And that's Judy Greer. She's a riot in this. I loved her character so much. And her as a werewolf is just like chef's kiss, like so great. And then I also really like Jesse Eisenberg's like role. Like when he's like, he's talking to one of my favorite parts is when the guy from school comes to his house and he's like trying to tell him, he's like, oh, of course you would know that I'm gay because you're gay. And he's like, I'm not gay. And he's like, and he's like, no, like I'm a werewolf. I'm not gay. He's like, no, I'm cursed. And he goes, yeah, I can feel like that sometimes. He's like, no, like I'm a werewolf. I'm like, and that whole scene, I was dying laughing because what is it he said that made me laugh? He goes, oh, he's like, okay, yeah, I'm with you. And Jesse Eisenberg, Jimmy just looks at me and goes, yeah, okay, all right. He's just like, calm down.
I've always loved Jesse Eisenberg and his he's always had that nice guy personality in movies for the most part.
Yes.
But like at the same time he has such like good humor as well.
It's
and it just
balanced, yeah.
Right? It feels right. So
yeah, him and Judy Greer, I think, carry it on the acting front because their characters are both so funny. And even though Judy Greer is technically like the villain, I just think she's great. I like her in everything I think I've ever seen her in. And she just plays those kind of roles like really, really well. And and everybody else just felt pretty mediocre. Even shockingly, Christina Ricci, like I really like her a lot. But I didn't think she really brought that much to this on the acting front. I mean, not that it was bad, but it definitely was overshadowed, I think, by the other two performances that I already mentioned.
Yes, I can definitely agree with that.
Yeah.
Okay. So what did you think about the acting in Perfect Creature?
I really liked the acting in Perfect Creature. I felt like everybody was pretty believable. I mean, I think our main two characters, Saffron Burrows, which is the female cop, and then I've already forgot the guy's name that plays Silas, but Silas and Lily are the two main characters, and I think they did really good. I like the guy that played Edgar as well. I think he did a really good job of kind of playing the crazy psycho vampire, I guess. Like, but I don't, from what I'm thinking and remembering, I mean, I just watched it. So, I feel like the acting in this was different too, because it's a much more serious film. But I liked it. You've got like the one detective that's like a bit of a speciesist, like he's like anti-vampires and he's anti the Brotherhood. And so he just acts real weird about that stuff. And he's like, let me kill him. And, but I think everybody played their part really well. I didn't really feel like any of that was missing anything for me or lacking. I thought it was believable and fine. I thought it was good.
All right. I felt like it was low to average, and it felt like they were trying really hard, and also it felt almost hesitant. to me. Like the actors were like hesitant on being that monstrous self, I guess. And it felt like they were holding something back. I don't know how to describe it other than that, but it just kind of had that kind of like tug feeling. Like it was like they were,
Yeah.
I don't know.
I think Saffron Burrows is just that in everything she's in, because she's the same way in Deep Blue Sea, and she's the same as Andromache in Troy. I think that's very much just kind of how she is. You know, like some people are just themselves when they're acting, like, and so they're the same thing in everything that they're in, which is not a knock. I mean, it's fine. I like her. I don't dislike her, but I think that's part of it with her. I think that the Silas character is meant to feel that way because of how he like came up. You know, he came up being told he had to protect this other vampire, and he's like in the brotherhood stuff, and he's trying to like bring it to mainstream to work with the humans, and he's got to keep all of that shit that he's feeling and seeing and thinking about inside. So he always feels like he's about to say something else, and then he just doesn't. He just stands there. And so with him, I definitely get it, but at least with him, I do think it was intentional. Edgar, I do think, talked a little too much, but I thought he did fine acting wise.
Okay.
He just had a lot to say, I guess, because he was like, I don't know. I don't even know. Because his motivation for stuff was so strange. Because he was like, oh, I'm going to like kidnap this cop and make my brother drink my blood. And like, it's like, that doesn't make any sense. Like, what are you doing? He's like, I'm going to put it in the water. And I'm like, I feel like you aren't very sure what you want to do. Like it feels a bit scattered, but yeah, no, I didn't think the acting was bad in this. I've definitely seen worse in a vampire movie for sure.
Oh yeah. Agreed there too.
Yeah.
All right. So we're on to the storyline.
Mm-hmm.
As far as Cursed goes, what did you think about the story?
Story is really not that strong. Because it is, I think because it's supposed to be like a horror comedy or whatever, it feels very teenage drama. Because I mean, essentially the plot is there's two siblings whose parents, I guess, are dead. And then outside of that, there's this girl who had a one night stand and then accidentally became a werewolf. And so now she's just going to kill all the women that this guy has ever slept with to like win him over or something.
Yeah.
And like that. And then he's like supposed to be pretending to be this like dark and brooding, mysterious, whatever, which he's horrible at. Like he's not good at that role. But like, so storyline wise, it's super, super weak in my opinion. I feel confident in saying most people are not returning to this because they just love the story. You know, most people I think are returning to this to watch like a fun werewolf movie, not to like get like super into the characters and the plot and all of that. I don't think that's happening with this one.
I would agree with that.
Yeah. It's silly. It's a silly werewolf movie, but I'm here for it. I'm not mad about it. It's fine. It works.
So I'll give my opinion as soon as I give you this other little bit of facts about this movie being was plagued by production problems and script issues. This film's release was delayed over a year. Over half of the movie had to be reshot, with many cast members being replaced due to scheduling conflicts. So Mandy Moore was supposed to be in this. The guy Skeet Ulrich was supposedly going to play Jake's role.
He would have been better,
right? And then I forget which one of the Corey Feldman was going to be in this. I don't remember what he was going to be, but it is a trip to see how different it is. And the Craven, I guess Wes Craven had 90% of this film shot. A gorier, more serious film with supposedly not much CGI. And the werewolves would have been done by Rick fucking Baker. So I feel like we would have been, if they would have left him to do whatever he wanted, it would have been a completely different film. Now, stepping away from that and saying, okay, we get that, but we're just going based off of what is in front of us, right? So based off of the film that we got, which is unfortunate hearing all that, right? It makes you be like, oh shit, that could have been like
Yeah.
the best werewolf film, right? In my mind, Rick Baker would have learned all that stuff from making American Werewolf in London and then had all the money that he needed to back him in this. Oh my God. And you have all those actors that are really good actors. Oh,
And
man.
huge at that time too. Like, yeah, I mean,
so that drives me crazy hearing all that. But I just found most of that out just recently when I did the research
get
for
ready
this.
for, yeah. It's
So-
crazy because, so I guess does it specifically, I mean, was the production delays because of the fucking studio meddling? Probably it was, right?
Yeah.
'Cause-
No.
yeah.
Was,
So it's like, and then they get mad because then they don't make what they wanted to. It's like, that's because y'all don't know how to leave shit alone. Like,
yeah.
leave it to the people that know the genre, right? Like, leave it to the people, the professionals. Like, that's why you have them doing it, right?
Exactly.
Just leave it alone.
Damn. But again, makes me wonder like what it could have been. So for me, the storyline was fast paced, fun. It went quickly and it was stupid and campy. It wasn't anything to take serious. I mean, like I was saying before, it does have some humor in it that is a bit dated and a little offensive, to be honest. So that's one of the negatives. I feel like we didn't need all that in there, and I felt like it kind of did it a lot throughout the film.
More than I remembered. Yeah,
right?
More than I remembered.
That was kind of off-putting to me. So again, I really wish we could have seen what would have happened if Craven would have been left the fuck alone.
Yeah, because that's sad. I mean, the studios do that a lot, though. They interfere, and then they just it ruins it every time. Like, I can't think of a single example of a time where that's happened and it made the movie better. Like, that's just not reality.
Agreed.
Yeah.
All right. So what did you think about the storyline in Perfect Creature?
Also a little silly. I kind of liked this play on, like, first of all, one of my favorite Mike Flanagan things is Midnight Mass. So I love the kind of parallels between vampirism and Catholicism. I think that's super fascinating. So I loved that was kind of what this was. The Brotherhood essentially was like Catholic priest. They weren't like allowed to be in love, and they were like all about just like their beliefs and their like mission and whatever. The weird for me, the story combination of the vampire stuff with the Brotherhood and whatever, the new vampire strand or whatever you want to call it, with this like influenza outbreak, I didn't really think that the influenza outbreak really like, I guess like it made sense. Like I got it, but it just felt like, what was really the point in combining the two things? Like, because like, okay, her Lily's daughter and husband died because they got the flu, but like, that's fine. Like, that could have still been there without having like the whole story element be about the influenza outbreak and like like, I just felt like that part didn't really tie in, but it felt like such a focal point. Like I kept waiting for it to kind of tie more into the other stuff. And I guess they talk a little bit about like, oh yeah, like he's the reason that you have like the vaccine that you do. And it's like, I mean, I guess. So I felt like this story was a little silly too. And like I mentioned before, Edgar is kind of like a cartoon Batman villain. He's very like, he just does weird things like that. I felt like the motivation for felt a little watered down. Like it didn't really seem to make as much sense as I think they thought it did. I did like the dynamic between Silas and Lily, and I liked kind of him, like Silas kind of coming more into like his humanity. So like some of those kind of moments I thought were really nice and they worked really well. But overall, the major plot points in this just felt kind of like, yeah, I mean, okay, I guess like I said, it felt very much like Underworld and Daybreakers combined. And I think both did it better. So that made it kind of hard to be invested in the story, I think.
Okay. For me, the storyline felt a little bit convoluted, drawn out,
Yeah.
and felt somewhat, again, like a Lifetime movie. It did feel longer than an hour and 28 minutes.
I agree.
Now, I was watching this on Tubi,
So there's like me too.
It could have been because of the fucking commercials, but maybe, but I don't know. It just felt like I kept pausing it to do random stuff, and I'm like, I couldn't really get engaged. I wanted to focus on the movie. I love vampire movies. I loved the dark aesthetic. I loved the fact that it had like a different vibe to it than most of them. But there's something that just felt like it was just too, like maybe it just played it too safe and just right in the middle. So you're just kind of like I don't know. I don't know. Like I wanted to want, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I do know what you mean. I think like I agree because there were times where I was like tapping the screen to see how much longer I had. Where I was like, let me just because I was watching it on my phone, and there was a couple parts where I'm not gonna lie to you, I did hit the skip thing because I was like, I don't care. Like this is taking so long. Like that scene, and this is just one of many examples, but the scene when Lily is walking up to the baby, why did that take like 5 minutes? Like just stop. Just can you just like walk like a normal person? Like just go up and pick up the damn thing. That part I was like, what is happening?
It was weird to me too because it made me feel a little bit motion sickness, and I thought that was strange because, and I want to say it was the way that the camera would whip back and forth.
Yeah, I
and
did.
Then it was one of the first scenes in the car. It really like it almost looked like someone like kind of let the camera drop or something to an angle, and it really like I don't know why I'm so sensitive to that type of stuff, but it's one of the reasons why it's hard for me to watch found footage as well. It's like,
I was gonna say, I can see that.
Yeah, because I do like me some found footage. It sucks because I have to actually deal with the sickness that comes with it if I watch them.
That's fair. The good news is they're starting to do stuff with more than just hand cams. So it's like stationary, which helps. Yeah. And the thing is, while we're kind of talking about the way this was shot, I do think there's some really good shots in this cinematography wise. And it feels like there's like some very artistic setups, like moments of like what we're seeing and the way that it's kind of framed and all of that. But to your point, you kind of get pulled away from it because then it's very disjointed. So yeah, that's true. I felt the same way. I think this movie probably could have been like 45 minutes.
It felt a little choppy for me. Also, like it felt like they would like cut to different scenes and like the transition between it was like left me wondering like what.
Yeah.
But also I don't know if we're already getting into it. The vampire lore or lack of. I was kind of wondering what happened. The two kid vampires aged, but yet the dad stayed the same age. That was so like, what is happening? I'm like, wait, vampires aren't supposed to age. First of all, that's one rule, and second of all, how's the dad still the same fucking age and these kids are like growing up from babies? And so that was like, okay, fine, I'm gonna let that go.
Yeah. The thing is like some of the setup for the lore was cool. Like the concept of the brotherhood was really neat. Like I was there for that. But to your point, it was like very surface level lore. They just like showed you things or gave you bits of information and then they just kind of like moved on from it. Like they were like, oh, like the brotherhood doesn't feed from humans. And I was like, that's a cool concept. Tell me more. And then they were like, well, so anyway, and then they were just like, go to the next thing.
Figure it out yourself.
And like fill in the blanks or whatever. It was weird. And again, sad because I think that those like, it's hard to make vampires unique anymore. And so that was cool. And I liked the kind of, like I said before, like the religious undertones and all of that was good, but they didn't really like, it would have been cool to see more like what it was like for Silas and Edgar growing up. Like, and if vampires live forever, but they like max out at a certain age, like say that, like explain, like they age very slowly. Like it took the boys 100 years to get their age, right? Or to look that way. But like, then, like you said, the other person like didn't age at all. Like there was no visible difference. So like, yeah, you got to explain that. You can't just leave that shit just like that. That's weird.
The other thing was they were able to go in the daylight, which was kind of surprising.
Oh yeah.
And they were able to get hurt somewhat easily. I mean, I remember the one vampire falling from the side of that building and he got knocked out. He gets knocked out multiple times. Silas, the main character.
He does. He ends up on the ground a lot, doesn't he?
And I'm just like, some of those fight scenes seemed almost, I don't know, like it just seemed very, I don't want to say cheaply done, but like it just felt almost like, is this like a fight scene or what are we watching? This is like this is just, it's interesting because you're expecting a vampire to act a certain way, move a certain way, have a certain amount of abilities and speed. So also I want to say the main bad guy in the film Vampire, right? When he gets killed off, it's like wasn't by any type of stake through the heart, sun.
It was anticlimactic too, yeah.
It was just like, okay, so this build up to this ending.
Yeah, especially because there's like that whole conversation where the Lily, the female cop, is asking Silas, she's like, do you think us pathetic or something like that? And he's like, no, he's like, you're fragile. And it's like, so are you. Like, what are you talking about? You black out if someone blows on your face too hard. Like, what do you mean?
What happened? Exactly. That's where I was kind of like confused. Like, it seems like they're not much above human. They are. Like, but not a lot. I mean, he
not by much at all.
After cutting his wrist to feed her so she could survive or whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
And then after that, he healed. But that was like the one thing that I saw that was remotely vampire-ish. The fact that they had fangs, I guess.
The only other time that I felt like they did like a vampire movement or whatever is when Edgar escaped down the side of the building with Lily. He like did like, that was cool. Like he did like a swooping motion around the side of the building.
Yeah.
But again, super short lived. And it's the only thing like that we see, I think, in the whole movie, I'm pretty sure. Like it's not like there was that one part though. When was it? Was it towards the beginning where it was kind of like, it kind of felt like Silas thought he was in the Matrix. Yeah. Like he had these very like interesting movements. And then there's like that part where the other detective shoots and it nicks Edgar's cheek. And it's like slow motion. I don't know. Like there were moments like that where I was like.
Or what about with the fancy gun with the fancy bullets where it goes in slow motion? I thought that was like, it was an interesting thing, but they didn't explain what type of gun it was, what type of bullets it was, what the bullets did, why it was able to stop the other vampire. Like, it'd be cool to like understand like what's happening here, but okay.
What year did Underworld come out?
That's a good question. I do not know.
I'm gonna look it up really quick. Because my other thought was that, you know, the thing is that Underworld like it came out 3 years before this. That's not a good look, Perfect Creature. Okay. Because
and just in case people are thinking that we're just gonna shit on Perfect Creature, I have plenty of shit moments for Cursed as well, everyone.
Yeah, no, but while we're on the subject of the weaponry, that's like a straight Underworld rip then, because they had the special bullets in Underworld too, right? Like the ultraviolet rounds and the silver bleeding bullets or whatever for the Lycans. And so, and I was thinking, and I didn't realize when I was watching it, I wasn't thinking, oh, this came out like 3 years after Underworld, but it did. And that kind of bothers me now that I looked that up. That bugs me.
Yeah.
And the only thing we completely shit on is James Woods. Okay, that's it. That's all.
That's
Otherwise, good and bad.
All right. So now to the other film. What are some of the negatives that you feel about Cursed, besides some of the stuff that you mentioned, or we can retouch on it a little bit more deeply?
Yeah, when you had said that it was outdated, that was something that I really hadn't thought much about, but you're right. There's a couple of scenes in particular where it really just drives in some things that are just kind of like, okay, like what was the point of that? Was that necessary? Like it's really kind of over the top. I don't know. I think my biggest complaints with this in general are just I really did not like the CGI. I really did not. I think the CGI really took me out of so many moments. Like the transformation, I didn't remember being that bad. And so when it started up, I was like, oh yeah, let's go, because I think the wolf again he looks great. Or she looks great. And so that was frustrating. And then I think the other thing is I think turning werewolves into like a melodrama is fine. Like I think it's fun, but I would have probably preferred this even more if it had been more serious, which it sounds like it was meant to be.
Yeah.
Because there's moments in this where you like get really wrapped up in the cool werewolf stuff and then you get yanked back into the dumb human stuff and you're just like, oh, like he's like, oh, like when he shows up and he's like, oh no, now we can be together. I'm like, can you just break his neck? Like you're strong enough, now, right? Like, and he's like okay, this was one other. This is gonna sound like I'm nitpicking, but I noticed actually two things. But I noticed this to the point I couldn't ignore it. They have so many random sounds that they make as they just move around. Like there's parts in this, it drove me nuts. There's parts in this when like when Jimmy and Ellie are trapped in with Judy Greer's character, totally spacing her Jeannie, something. And they get in there, they're trapped in there with her, right? After like right around the reveal time of, oh, this is who this is. So like Jimmy's character like moves. Like that's all he does is he just moves closer to Ellie and he goes, ugh. And there's just like moments like that where I'm like, why are you making so many noises? All you did was like blink or something. And like when she like Judy Greer like knocks, Jesse Eisenberg's character and she just like knocks him and he's like, oh, like he's just, like, and I was just like, I don't know that is what a human being or even somebody in the process of becoming a werewolf would sound like if they just got knocked across the room like that. Like there was a lot of, I think it's like they hyper fixated on making like fight noises and they just came out like really goofy sounding, but it wasn't just his character. It was all of them that did it. Christina Ricci did the same thing. Judy Greer did, and I was just like, why do they keep making all these random ass noises that have nothing to do with the situation? And then the other thing, and this is not necessary, I just have to talk about it, but I don't know if it was just a hairstyle choice, but I felt like the last,
I feel an attack coming.
the last third of this movie, Christina Ricci's forehead just like kept growing. Like in the beginning, her hair is like parted across and it's like clipped or whatever. And you're like, oh, she looks like a normal person. And it's like, fine. But then all of a sudden I kept thinking she was going to change. And that's why she looked like that. And then it was like the next scene and she still looked like that. And then it was like, I was like, why did it change? Is it just the hairstyle? But then, now that I'm saying that, you said a lot of this had to be redone.
So it might have been, the time frame.
Yeah, like it might have something to do with that. Or if she had, because she went through a short hair thing too. If she had cut all her hair off, that could just be a really poorly attached wig. And that could be why it looks like it's so far back. Anyway, I don't know. That just drove me crazy. But the sounds really pulled me out of some of the fight scenes. I was like, who sounds like that when they're fighting a werewolf? Like, I just don't think that's realistic.
I'm wondering now if I either didn't hear it or didn't notice it, or if maybe the PG-13 tried to add in more sound effects to make up for the
up.
I mean, I don't know if that makes sense or not, but possibly.
It might be. It's edited different because it cuts away from the violence and stuff. So yeah, it just was one of those things where I was like, the first couple times I just kind of let it go, right? It's not that big a deal. But then like there's like chunks of scenes where it like happens a lot. And I'm like, what did you do? Shift the weight from one leg to another? Why are you making that noise? Like it just didn't make any sense.
All right. Well, since we're talking about negatives and we're talking about Christina Ricci, in an interview in 2018 or from 2018, Christina Ricci briefly spoke about the film, and Ricci states it was one of those studio movies that just got horribly screwed up. So, I mean, you've got the main actors talking shit about
Like,
this.
yeah, because they know. Yeah. They lived it.
Yeah. But I feel like some of the scenes were just way too cheesy. I have one of the negatives down here as the CGI transformation again. It just throws you out of it. Like if you're invested in the film and you're like going, and then all of a sudden it feels like you're watching a cartoon in the middle of your screen. It takes you out of the thing. It takes your mind out of it. So I get it.
Yeah.
And yeah, so
yeah.
Is that all we got as far as those?
Yeah, I think so. So
all right.
What does that mean? Who wins?
Well, that's where my question would be is what would we score Cursed on a scale of 1 to 10? This is going to be tough.
Oh, I think this is going to be easier to score than Perfect Creature, honestly. I would give Cursed probably a 6.
That's crazy. That's exactly what I was going to say. I was going to give it a 6. As far as Perfect Creature goes, what would you give it?
I'm mad about this one because I think this one had a lot of potential. But
Agreed.
Now that I know that it came out 3 years after Underworld, I'm a little irritated. I would give Perfect Creature a 5. I think it's very mediocre. Like you said, it feels like they played it safe with the concepts, with the gore, with the violence, with everything. And so when you're done watching it, you're not thinking, oh, that's the worst thing I've ever seen. But you're also not like, oh, I can't wait to watch that again. It's very just like, yeah, that was fine. I'm glad I watched it, but like I probably may not revisit ever, so I would give it a 5.
I would probably give it a 3.5, just based off the fact that it's not really memorable for me. When I go back,
that's
and
probably true. Yeah.
When I think of all the vampire films that I've ever watched,
yeah,
there's so many scary what the fuck moments. Oh my god, that vampire fucking did this or looked like this or something, right? So this one, it just is like I wanted.
I did
get me wrong. I really, really was like rooting for a vampire movie I hadn't seen before, and it was gonna like blow my mind. I was like, please, I haven't seen this. I'm like cross fingers. Like
I wanted it to be a film that we both watched and we were like, holy shit, this is like a great, and it was not. I'm with you because it's like, I don't know. I think it's easier to like werewolf films than it is to like vampires because I think vampires just get hokey so fast and not in a fun way.
Well,
and this just was
they didn't. It feels like they put a lot of effort into the film. It really does.
I agree. It just didn't land.
The fact that they didn't put effort into the right, like, just make give the vampire just a little bit of a look, like a little bit of a difference from humans. Because if you just leave a vampire looking human, like to me, it's like, okay, I'm watching a human with fangs, like, okay, but it's not selling it for me as like it's I need to know like, hey, there's a vampire, not a human, and I have to feel it, right? Just give me some type of indent to the eye, a little bit of like a point to the ear, like some like sucked in face.
And there's so many that have done such a great job with that. And again, like even though this one is like virusy kind of, right? There still could have been a lot more just a lot more effort. The lore, I think, really brought this down too, because it just like Wasn't there. It
Or
wasn't
back it
there.
up. If you're going to put that type of thing in there, back it up with why. That's all. Just give a little bit of this is how it
Take much, I don't think, to
right?
make viewers invested. But yeah, you got to put the information out there. Otherwise, it just feels like you couldn't come up with a reason, so you just like didn't address it.
That's how I was left feeling, kind of like, okay, I would have liked to understand a little bit more why things are the way they are. But yeah. Okay.
No.
As far as, so I'm assuming that we're in agreement that the creature design is higher for cursed than it is for
Oh yeah.
So
Oh yeah.
and then
Yeah.
also if we're voting that it's a better film overall, and then rewatching it, would we rewatch Cursed over Perfect Creature or Perfect Creature over Cursed?
No, cursed all the way.
Yeah.
As far as rewatch, I think the Perfect Creature is so middle ground that you're not going to think to rewatch it again.
All right.
Whereas Cursed, you're like, man, that was fun and crazy and weird, and I'm going to watch that again because I really liked it. You know, that was kind of my energy going into the rewatch, you know, to get ready for this chat. So, I mean, yeah, I think Cursed, yeah, takes that by a country mile.
Okay. I just want to make sure there's no last arguments. I'm like waiting. I'm like, there might be something.
Dave, like, what would you? How bothered would you have been if I'd been like, Perfect Creature is a 9 out of 10?
I would have been like, hey, this is the thing that makes this so interesting, though, is like we can really get into why and like have a little bit of a debate on it. I love having debates like that, you know.
I think those episodes are coming. We're about to be out of like middle ground territory.
When we get into some of the movies that I'm like, I won't budge on. There's some films out there that like I grew up with that have like really like just they're like cemented here.
I get it.
And
the good thing is or the what's true, right, is that some of these we definitely agree on anyway. Like, we both really love American Werewolf in London. We both really love Silver Bullet. Like, we have love for some of the same, but then we don't have the same top list for werewolf movies. Exactly. And we don't, you know, so it should be interesting to see once we start getting to those. It's going to be like, well,
for sure. All right. Well, cool. I'm excited. I'm excited to see what your next werewolf choice is.
I know. I gotta look at my list. I don't even know. I'm still trying to stay in like no man's land. I'm not ready to do the big ones yet.
Serious ones.
Yeah, because I know those are gonna be hard. Like, it's like I was telling you, like, there are certain werewolf movies, like, it won't matter what it goes against, it's winning for me. You know what I mean? Like, I'm trying to avoid that.
Makes sense.
I'll have to think about it. I have a list of ones. I just need to go back and look at what they were. So we'll see what I could come up with. So.
Cool.
All right, cool. Well, I think that's going to wrap up this episode of Cursed Beings. Albert's link, as well as where you can find our merch, is in the description for this episode. If you haven't seen the other episodes, there's a playlist under Cursed Beings. We've covered a lot of fun things. If you have movies you'd like us to consider to put up against each other, please let us know in the comments. We are open to suggestions for those too. And he's waving frantically, so maybe I should keep talking and I'll see how long. Anyway, thank you guys so much for hanging out with this episode of Cursed Beings. We hope you have a good rest of your week. Enjoy your weekend, and we will see you in the next one.
Bye, guys.